Every now and then we want to pick the brains of two of the smartest people we know when it comes to politics and the law. Dan Schnur teaches government and political communications at USC, UC Berkeley, and Pepperdine. Jessica Levinson teaches election law at Loyola Law School. Thanks to both of you. Jessica, let's start with you on the law. This past week, of course, there was the decision by the three-judge panel on international trade saying that the tariffs, he didn't have the emergency authorization to impose the tariffs. That is the president. Then there's a stay of execution. The press secretary says, just send this to the Supreme Court. Let them decide. Is that where this is going?
I think so. I'm a big proponent in it's not inevitable that everything reaches the Supreme Court. We know they only take actually a small sliver of those cases that are appealed up to them. But this does seem to be begging for Supreme Court resolution. We have a president trying to use a statute that no other president has tried to use before to say, I can impose tariffs, that I have the emergency authority to do this. It's both a constitutional question in a way and a statutory question. It's a question with big national importance, obviously, and significance. It does seem like it's screaming up to the Supreme Court. We can talk about the details, but I have a feeling we'll be talking about what the vote split is in that case in the not too distant future. Is it possible that the Supreme Court, Dan, I'll have you respond, could let him off the hook on tariffs? I mean, the fact is that this tariff policy is very unpopular. The fact is it is, it's causing problems with the stock market and the bond market. This would be his off-ramp. Listen, I want to do this. I would do this, but all of a sudden the courts are intervening.
I think that's exactly right. Now, neither you nor I, Conan, are White House advisors to the president, and we have no way of knowing what the real White House advisors are telling him. But you're exactly right. Although I'm sure they didn't do it intentionally, the Supreme Court is giving Donald Trump a gift here. Wall Street is upset about the tariffs. Small business, the bedrock of his constituency, is concerned about these tariffs. And for Trump to say, I tried, I fought hard, but those horrible, stupid judges wouldn't let me, gets him off the hook and maybe gives him an economic boost that would in turn help his political prospects going into the midterm elections.
Jessica, can you explain the decision by the court to essentially temporarily, from what I understand, eliminate the protective status of 500,000 immigrants into the United States? They could now be Cubans, Venezuelans. They could be picked up and deported now.
Absolutely. If I could pivot back to the other conversation ever so briefly, Dan was talking about the three co-equal branches and just wanted to add, of course, that I think Dan is right that the president can say, look, I tried with the tariffs, except look at the judges. But I will also offer that this is really another example of the president trying to go it alone because he may not have Congress. Let's remember that when it comes to the trade court's decision, the decision really was Congress didn't give you the power. Not necessarily that Congress can never give you, the president, the power, but that you're pointing to statutes that are grants of authority and none are as broad as the authority that you claim here. So I do think we have another example of not Congress going along, but Congress just kind of ceding power and staying silent. Now, separately, Conan, to this question of the recent ruling by the Supreme Court allowing the wind down of this parole program to go into effect, yes, by the Supreme Court saying we're staying that lower court decision that had attempted to stop the Trump administration's ending of this program, then the program can end. I don't think this is the end of the story, though. It means that the Trump administration can stop this program for now. It doesn't mean there's been a final decision on the merits. It doesn't mean that this won't ping pong up and down the federal court system for a few more weeks, if not months.
Last question for you, Dan. First, is Kamala Harris run for governor?
It's beginning to look less certain. If Harris had gotten into the race 3-4 months ago, it pretty much would have been her campaign for the taking. But now Antonio Villaraigosa said he's staying in no matter what and took a fairly forceful hit at Harris last week. Javier Becerra, Tony Atkins, the former state Senate president, they're all staying in whether Harris runs or not. And now Joe Biden's vice president is going to have to answer questions, as Villaraigosa put to her, is what did she know about Joe Biden's physical and mental state during his presidency, and when did she know it? The decline of Joe Biden is going to be a huge challenge for her, and I would be surprised, but not greatly, if it ended up tipping her decision not to run.
Jessica, what do you say about that?
I think Dan has excellent analysis here. I mean, Kamala Harris is obviously taking her time, and the longer she takes and the more stories come out about President Biden's decline and what she knew and whether or not she took responsible steps as vice president, I mean, the more she will have to answer those questions. I still think, of course, that if she does enter the race, I think it's worth emphasizing. I still think she is at least a presumptive favorite. If we're talking about name recognition, she obviously was the home state senator from California. We could talk about the races and how close the races were when she originally ran for attorney general. And then we could talk about whether or not she had strong opponents when she ran for Senate and her failed attempts to be president herself. But I still think that she would shake up this race in a hugely significant way.
Conan, if I can, just very quickly before we wrap up, I agree with Jessica. If Harris runs, she is the front runner, but I have never seen a front runner with a steeper hill to climb than Kamala Harris will have if she gets into this race.
Well, part of the steeper hill is that she drank from the chalice of national politics for years now. It is so difficult to go from Washington to Sacramento. I mean, that's just a fact. But in any case,
Hunter S. Thompson once said that the only cure for presidential fever is embalming fluid.
Right. Dan Schnur of SC, Jessica Levinson of Loyola, thank you to both of you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.